I wasn't really planning on making a video today, but yesterday I had something pretty interesting happen to me. I met someone that a very interesting person that I had a conversation with. It was yesterday evening. We had I'd gotten off work early yesterday evening, and Miranda, she was off yesterday, so we decided to take Loki here walking, and I was going to do some fishing, and just at the Wolf River Creek Greenway over here. I've made videos there before. I go fishing there fairly often just because it's so close to home here. It's just like a 3-minute drive from here. But yeah, you know, Miranda, she takes Loki walking while I fish there off the bank. And it was yesterday evening, like I said. And it just goes to show, like, who you never know who you'll meet just when you walk out your front door. I was fishing in the creek there. Miranda, she was walking Loki around behind me. The part of the park that I was at is where I filmed a lot of turtles there in a couple of videos. There's a pond. The stream runs right next to it, and there's like a sidewalk walks around it. You know, there's swings that you can, like the relaxing swings, not the swings that a kid, you know, swings in a playground. And there's a little picnic area. You know, it's really, really pretty. And as I was fishing there, Miranda, she's maybe 10, 15 foot away from me, walking the opposite direction with Loki, and I hear her start talking to someone, and it's a man and a woman, you know. And the man, he sees me, and he walks up to me. He's a tall man, a big man. He's probably 6'3", broad-shouldered, has blondish brown hair about the color of mine, has blue eyes the color of mine. And this is important when I tell you the rest of the story, you know. And this man, he comes up to me, and the woman, his wife, you know, she's talking to Miranda about Loki here. And he comes up there and starts a conversation with me as I'm fishing. And he first asks me, he's like, what kind of fish do you catch out of the creek here? And you know, I told him all the species that I've caught out of it before, you know. He's like, really, there's that many fish in there? I'm like, well, this area, you know, it's fished fairly often, but I catch a fish every now and then, you know. It's just convenient, it's close. I go further downstream if I want to catch a lot of fish where it's not fished as often. And then I noticed he had an accent, and he noticed that I had an accent as well. He asked me, he's like, where are you from? What's your accent? And I told him that I'm from northeast Tennessee, about 4 hours northeast of here. It's up in the mountains, you know. We talk differently up there, and I guess my accent sounds different than a lot of people's down here just 4 hours away. And I noticed that he had an accent as well, and I thought he might have been Australian at first. That's what it sounded like to me. So I asked him where he is from, and he is from South Africa. I was like, oh really? And he told me that he was born in Zimbabwe, which, come to find out, you know, when I came back home after having this conversation with this man, I look it up, and you know, Zimbabwe was once Rhodesia, I believe. And we get to talking about stuff, you know. He asks me what I do for a living. I tell him. He's a really nice gentleman, really polite. He was dressed well. He had dress pants on. He looks like he had been wearing a suit, but he just didn't have a jacket and his tie on. And it turns out he's a project manager at a large construction company that does a lot of construction work at various places here in East Tennessee. I've even seen he mentioned the name of the company, and I've actually seen it advertised before. But he asked me a pretty deep. I quit fishing for a second. I reel my lure in, and I set my pole down. And I go over there and sit down with him, talk to him for, I don't know, I guess it was about 15 or 20 minutes. And we get to talking. He asks a pretty deep question to me. He's like, well, I tell him my name, we shake hands. It was funny because he shook my hand and he was like, well, I don't know if I'm supposed to do that with all this social distancing. And I'm like, hey, I don't care. And we shake hands and stuff. The way I see it, I'm not even really worried about this social distancing. It's so funny at work because they have us wait outside the door before we check in, before we go through the security station. They have it marked where we're waiting in line 6 feet apart. And it makes me laugh because once we get in there to work, it's like we're fucking right next to each other anyway. It's like, what use is it? I mean, and then I'm going to handle a package or something, you know, that's been handled by about 400 other people. So it's like the social distancing, I don't know why they're doing it. They even have it lined up like that when we walk into work. But anyway, that's a different story. Back to the original story. This man, his name was Bruce. He asked me what I wanted out of life. You know, I was kind of caught off guard by that question. And I sat there, you know. He asked me if my job had been treating me well, and I'm like, yeah, you know, it's not my favorite job that I've ever had. It's not the most, but you know, it's a job and it pays well for what it is, and it's not too bad. It could be a lot. I've had a lot worse jobs in the past. But he also asked me like what I wanted out of life. And, you know, it's kind of caught me off guard. I sat there and I thought for maybe 5 seconds, and I answered to have children. You know, to have children. And he was like, oh, that's really nice. Do you have any children already? I'm like, no, I don't have any children already. I told him that my younger brother and his wife back home, you know, they're expecting their first child here in just a few weeks. So, and I was pretty excited about that. Pretty excited to be an uncle. And I get to talking to him, and I ask him, you know, what led him to being here in America. And he said that him and his wife had been here for 3 years now, about 3 years. And that his wife, I believe she was American because she was a citizen already when he came over here. But he said something, and it shocked me, which, I mean, I'd heard of this happening, but it's happening. It's hidden by the media, of course. There's a media blackout on this subject. But he told me, and this man, Bruce, I believe he was probably around 40 years old. He was older than I am, a little bit. I'd say, if I had to guess, he was around 40, at the youngest, late 30s, through his early 40s. But 3 years ago, he came here to America for a fresh start because, as he put it, I'm like, what led you here? And he's like, well, my family had farmed for generations in South Africa, several generations, I guess. He said that they had a 3,000-acre cattle farm there. And I told him, you know, I was from a very rural area, and I loved being away from people. And he said, I understand completely, you know, I grew up on a 3,000-acre farm. And he told me then that the farm was taken from him and his family because of the color of their skin. You know, the farm was taken from them. They were basically evicted for having white skin. And that's heartbreaking, you know. And this is happening. And he even added in, after he told me this statement, he's like, I don't mean to be offensive, and I'm like, oh, no, you You don't offend me at all. It offends me that that happened to you. That's horrible. And I mean, it's true. This has been going on for well over a decade, I guess, now, there in South Africa. You know, the government, it's controlled by the indigenous population. And they're basically running white people off of their farms. Oftentimes, they even kill them. Now this man, Bruce, his family, they had to leave. They had, I think, 1,000 cattle, is what he had said. They had a large amount of livestock. And they were approached by this, by the black policemen there, the officials, you know, and they were given 72 hours to vacate the premises. So basically, I'm sure Bruce and his family had heard news of what had been going on in other parts of South Africa, you know. They hastily decided to, him and his family, they hastily decided to sell out all their cattle. They managed to get a fraction, just a fraction of the money that the cattle were worth due to having to sell it so hastily. They were given, you know, 72 hours to get out of there, and so I guess that's about 3 days. They were, they managed to get their cattle sold, and they got their possessions together. And at the end, about 3 days later exactly, right around the same time of day, Bruce told me that at their gates there was a large mob, and some of the South African, the indigenous population, mind you, there was a large mob of them at their gate, you know. Basically, I believe it would have ended very differently if they hadn't have been willing to leave. That's what Bruce said. He said it could have been very violent. They may not have made it, you know. And it's horrible. I mean, these people are having their land stolen, and it's just as horrible, you know, because the media here in the United States, the Western media, they don't even fucking talk about this shit. And you know, and it'll even be, if you bring this up on social media or various platforms, you will be called a white supremacist. The fact that, you know, the white South African farmers are being killed and having their land stolen. If they put up a fight, they're murdered brutally. And I mean, I'll show you something here. And I talked to Bruce for a few minutes. You know, we talked about Loki here and fishing and life. He's a very nice man, very intelligent. He said he loved it here in Southeast Tennessee. He lives in the town that we live in here. He even, you know, he goes walking with his wife there quite a bit. His wife told Miranda that he had actually proposed to her, I guess sometime in the past 3 years there at that park, right there at that pond. So, you know, they're very nice people. And I'll show you something here, because when me and Miranda, we talked about this quite a bit when we got home, about how they're having their farms taken over there, being murdered in some cases. Racial Consciousness is a guy on Twitter that I follow. And he had a tweet, it was very interesting, and I will show you this tweet right here. This is a screenshot of a journalist named Ben Marouk, and I'm sure you can guess what ethnicity Mr. Marouk is. He's a blue checkmark kind of guy. He's also a blue six-sided star kind of guy. I'm pretty sure, I've not even checked, but the name Marouk and what he looks, I'm not even going to bother checking. I don't know what ethnicity he is. But, you know, read this here. Read this. It says here, you know, he's basically wanting to interview this online store owner who's selling large amounts of flour. And, you know, this is something that, you know, it's for prepping. And he's like asking, this Marouk guy is asking the owner what kind of people he's intending to sell all this flour to, you know. And that should be a red flag right there. And then he goes on. The guy, you know, asks him, tells him what, you can read it here, what he's telling is going on. And then look at the next question that this asshole, this fucking asshole, Mr. Maruk, asks. It's about his business's willingness to sell Rhodesian military patches. And you know, that just struck me as odd. It caught my eye because I had just talked to a man from Rhodesia. But anyway, it's not some neo-Nazi conspiracy, you know. It's not some great replacement. The great replacement itself, it's not no fucking conspiracy. If you talk about it, you're a conspiracy theorist. But we know who controls the media after all. But yeah, I just thought I would tell this story. It was very interesting to meet this man, Bruce. I'm glad he's safe. I'm glad he's over here in the United States. But yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory. Not at all. This video is already long enough. I'm going to go in here and eat some lunch. But I'd like to thank y'all for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.